that's America, and we're glad we have. This is our first town hall meeting of the 119th Congress, and it seems like we've been going for 6 months already, and it's only been 4 weeks of new administration, and about 6 weeks since the new Congress was sworn in on January 3rd. So a lot's been taking place. Getting the chairmanship of the House Education Workforce Committee has been exciting for me. Getting that committee up and organized, all staffed, and getting the hearing dates established, and had the opportunity this last week to have our first markup of 5 bills dealing with the influence of malign actors around the world, especially the Chinese Communist Party in our educational institutions, and putting some significant restrictions on that, along with North Korea, Iran, and Russia, and their involvements as well. And then for those of you that think our young people ought to have some choices with their nutrition at the school lunch program, we did get finally put back that they can purchase whole milk. And that includes, and I want to make sure, I see Superintendent out here, I want to make sure that's chocolate milk too. That's for me. I don't know if it's for the other kids, but for me, chocolate makes it best. So we're having an interesting time. This president isn't wasting any moments in getting things done and keeping the promises that he made. And I tell people, you know, if you feel like disruption is taking place, well, yeah, he didn't lie about the fact he was going to be a disruptor of what was becoming status quo in government, and it become status quo for a long time, and that's a bipartisan concern about the status quo when we live in a world that's changing, a world that has competitors for America's greatness, but their greatness would be after a different pattern. And for us to let that happen and be run over by those interests that are not for freedom, for opportunity, for choice, for dissent, would be a wrong thing to do. So hang on for the ride. I tell people, when you hear something in the mainstream media, don't immediately go for the nearest window to jump out of, unless, of course, it's first floor. Otherwise, hang loose a bit, see how it works out, see what takes place. Right now, we're going through an audit. That's all it is. We're going through an audit. And we're going through an audit on behalf of the American taxpayer.
That's right.
And we're going through an audit in very different ways than we've had the opportunity before. I don't know how many letters over the years I've sent to various agency heads, signed on letters to get some additional information. As chairman of the Education Workforce Committee, I've already signed a bunch of letters this year. But I don't know how to produce an algorithm. But DOGE does. They know how to produce an algorithm that gets to the base and then is able to go out to the systems and other lines and ultimately bring it back to a conclusion that says this is what's happening. That's how they were able to find that there are people 200 years of age, allegedly, still getting IRS checks, Social Security checks. They've been capable of doing that. I don't know how to do that. Now, we'll be looking at all those facts and figures and making sure they're facts and figures that are actually telling us the truth, but we have the opportunity to see those. I think that's good. I mean, you want the businesses and industries that you work with. Some of you have, if you have investment income, you want audits done regularly. That's all we're doing right now. And what is being shown ought to cause a lot of concern. I also understand why the financial condition of this country right now is very thick. So that's what we're looking at. Before we go to questions, I'm talking to you a little time, and the cards in the handout. Before we got the card. So that's how we're going to do those. probably most of you attended my town hall, in order to keep it moving. We do cards, gives you a chance to think through what your question is, gives us a chance to address those questions in a much more expedient fashion. What I'm involved with now, there are nine members of, or 9 committee chairs in the House that have reconcilable issues in our budget area. House Education Workforce Committee is one of those 9. And so I've been responsible to finding all of the cuts that we can make that fit the requirements of expenditures or taxation. Under reconciliation, there are very defined lines that are so defined that we don't know for sure absolutely what they are until the Senate parliamentarian tells us that we met that requirement or not. But we know it has to be expenditure-based. It can't be policy-based. Now, some of those expenditures touch policies, of course. But so that's what we're working on. And right now, we're looking for over $2 trillion of cuts that we can find that will meet that reconciliation requirement under the Senate parliamentarian. If we miss on one of those issues, then all of our reconciliation items are thrown out. So that's why we've got to be cautious. We'd like to go more. I've been given a target. I've been given another target. I've been given another target, so it's changed. But we believe we can find those reconcilable cuts and put them over. And ultimately, if we can do that, we don't need a 60-vote majority in the Senate to pass these cuts and pave the way to make sure we keep the tax cuts of 2017, Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. We can keep them permanent for small businesses and individuals. And that's our goal that we're working on right now. Because I do not want to be around when those tax cuts go off. And all of you people in small businesses are impacted with the largest tax increase in modern history. So that's what we're attempting to do right now. And I think we're going to complete it. President Trump came out yesterday finally with what we hoped he would say, what we thought he would say, but he led us to believe he would say that he wants that one big beautiful bill that takes in national security, border security, and the tax reductions, or the expense reductions. And so that's where it's at right now. The Senate will continue to do their thing with a two-bill approach. But we believe with the 218 votes that we have to get to complete in the House, it has to be one bill. Some people like the border security issues more. Other people like the cuts in spending more. Bring it together, work it through as one. So we'll see what happens there. President Trump's first day, executive orders. Poster there. He wasn't wasting any time. If any of you watched him doing a press conference and signing the executive orders at the same time and answering questions back and forth, and he's done those a number of times since then as well. It's been amazing to see what he's taken on. Now that stirred up the hornet's nest in many ways. But as recently as yesterday, courts are siding with him. Because, and we can talk about that today if you have concerns about his ability as the chief executive of the United States of America under Article 2 powers to do what he can do. He can do all that. We can give him the money, we can give him the law, but if he stays within the confines of that little impressive document called the Constitution and the laws that are in place, he can do anything he wants as a chief executive, whether we fully understand or like it or not. The least powerful entity in our governmental system is Article 3. And as you know, that's the judiciary. And they've stepped way beyond their bounds. We talked about that before. They have no authority except under the Constitution and law to tell the chief executive what he can or can't do. Preparing for that statement, I went through and read Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 again a couple times in this past week thus far, just to make sure that I didn't miss something. As I hear what judges have said, And most of them have been overturned. Now, they don't have that power.
That's right.
And the president doesn't even have to spend the money that we give it. That's how checks and balances the systems of government work. And I'd be glad to have any of you, if you know where I'm missing a point in the Constitution, you show me that, and I'll change my statements next time. The House GOP, we passed the Lake and Riley Act, a tragic act where we let a legal alien out who had been convicted, charged before with significant crimes, takes the life of a up-and-coming, young, promising student, tragically. Protection of Women and Girls in Sports Act, that was the first bill to come out of my committee and passed to the floor of the House, that says boys and men aren't competing in girls and women's sports. And I take the position of the parent that the president has as well. There are two genders,
That's right.
male, female.
That's right.
DNA tells me that too. The X's and the Y's don't lie. I think we need to get back to reality and common sense. That bill was passed. That's over in the Senate right now. Protecting American Energy Production Act passed in the House, giving us more opportunity to drill, baby, drill. To use what's necessary to run those data centers that we don't have the power to run right now. We've lost data centers developing in this state because we don't have the power. Now, I'm not opposed to windmills or solar fields where they work. We also need big energy, which includes natural gas, coal, and nuclear power. And I'm glad to see that energy companies are starting to wake up and speak truth to power. And finally tell us, no, we were going the wrong direction. We've got to be more serious about what we need. The Born Alive Abortion Survivors Protection Act passed the House. It said we're going to treat an aborted fetus, that's a term that we want to use, I call it a baby.
That's right.
But who was aborted, but lo and behold came out and lived. We're going to treat that baby the same way we treat any other baby after birth.
That's right.
With all due care. Absolutely. That passed the House. And then the Halt Fentanyl Act that takes a huge swing at any of our foreign countries that are trying to push fentanyl into our system here in this country. That is poisoning, that is killing our people. So those are the actions thus far coming out of the House. Daily border encounters of illegal aliens. If you've been looking in the news media, you've gotten some of this because they can't hide it. When you got pictures to show, there's hardly anybody at the border crossings anymore except going through the legal pathways. Daily average under Biden, 2,087 border encounters of illegal aliens. So far under Trump, in 4 weeks, January 21st, 29th, the week where this looks at what took place, and it's going down since then, 126 daily encounters. Why? Because the message was put out, it's not worth you coming unless you want to come the legal route. Then have at it. Please come the legal route. We're glad to entertain them. So that's just bringing you up to date a little bit with what has been going on. Let's go to question. I have a list of bills that I had the privilege of passing back in the 118th Congress, dealing with enhancing detection of human trafficking, Association Health Plans Act, which we're going to pass again, and I believe with this president will get signed into law, giving all people the opportunity to have the same type of health capabilities that union workers would have. And I think that's a good thing. We all have those same opportunities. The Choice in Automobile Retail Sales Act, HARS Act, which prevented the government telling us what vehicle we had to drive. Yes.
Want an EV? Fine. I'd love to have a Ford F-150 Lightning just as a hot rod. That's not going to pull my camper and all the rest in any distance. Pipes Act, which again makes it more possible for places like Line 5 to keep operating. So we have the resources carried safely, don't have to go on our highways, over our bridges, or on our Great Lakes. The Protect Kids Act, which required elementary, secondary school to report to a parent if the child was asking for his or her pronouns to be changed, or ask for counseling on how to transition their gender. Seems common sense to me. It seems morally right that the schools are expected to report that to the parents or the guardian. That child is attempting this change in their life, under penalty of all the federal funds being withdrawn from the schools. So that's why. Plan for Broadband Act, which developed a national strategy, which we didn't have, and that bill actually became law. We'll keep pushing for expansion of broadband, especially the rural broadband. And then finally, the Equal Campus Access Act, that no funds will go to an institute of higher education that prohibits the free use and display of persons' religious and First Amendment liberties. I think I've given enough time for the cards to be put in, so why don't we go to the first card?
Brandon from Erie writes, President Trump and Elon Musk are taking steps to limit Congress's power. What are you, as our representative, going to do to protect the voices of your constituents?
Well, it's an important thing. I'm Article 1. If you read the Constitution, Article 1 powers are larger, more expansive than any of the other two articles. Even in the sense of pages, Article 1 powers are more expansive. Why? Because we represent the people. And as one of our framers and founders said, the person asked, said, here the people rule.
That's right.
So my Article 1 powers are important, and I will uphold those. And so that's why we will look at everything that President Trump and any of his advisors or cabinet members push. If they're accurate, and they fit in the confines of the Constitution and law, whether I like it or not, he has that responsibility. If it steps outside of that, then we'll push back, because I represent 5th District of Michigan, from Lake Michigan to Lake Erie. And those are the ones who've elected me, and I've sworn to uphold the Constitution, and I'll do that.
Mark from Monroe writes, BRICS nations expansion, any plan to address?
Well, the way we address that is we show that the United States is the strongest power on the face of the earth. You can have your BRICS, you have your EU, you have NATO agreements that work together, but as long as America is the strongest and has the greatest impact, I don't care about BRICS. It means nothing to me. They need us more than we need them if we're strong. Got to go with these, unless that was your question.
That was my question.
It was your question.
Yeah, in regards to BRICS, you see, BRICS started 10, 12 years ago. It was only 5 nations. It's now up to about 18, maybe 20. Turkey and Serbia are on the verge of joining. And, of course, the goal is to destabilize the U.S. dollar. And if the energy will be the issue.
Yeah, thank you, Joe Biden. If energy is the issue, we have no problem. We've got all the energy resources we need.
That's right.
And more, especially if we go nuclear, which we can't. So BRICS will suddenly start to lose their desire when they see that the big dog is in the hunt again.
There's a lot of other people have a different opinion on that issue.
Yeah, well, I think I'm going to be right, but we'll see.
And the nuclear plant's 10 years away. Edison's 10 years away on the 4 reactors. They're planned for Monroe. They've unofficially announced it already.
Well, when you're talking about small modular reactors, we can do it much more quickly. And if we do, which is becoming a bipartisan issue now, regulatory reform, where we start to reduce the time and space, speaking of space, that means white page space, necessary for getting a regulatory permit through, we can move much more quickly. Others, including our 51st state, Canada, they can run regulations. It's easy to trick some of you.
It's insulting to our allies.
It's easy to trick some of you.
Yeah,
We
it's a
gotta-
funny joke, it's ridiculous. You're wasting time for all of us.
That's right.
Yeah,
I
right.
agree.
mean, come on.
Come on, get to the issue. You have power in the
That
country
was sent.
over
sent-
the judicial.
That was said jokingly. But the bottom line is, Canada has a mine right now, a copper mine. They got the permit process through totally 3 years.
Uh-huh.
The United States is still working on one in Minnesota that's been 20 years, and it's not complete. And right now, I just came off the Energy and Commerce Committee and was put on leave of absence because I took the chairmanship of the Education Workforce Committee. But we dealt with that, and Frank Pallone, the Democrat ranking member on the committee, and our chairwoman at the time, Kathy Morris Rogers, and a multiple of Republicans and Democrats were all coalescing around regulatory reform. We see the cost and the waste of time and the competition that we have.
We're gonna have to win the White House beyond Trump for a few terms.
Well, let's.
Are we out of order, or what are we doing?
Next question.
Yes, Mark from Ida writes, what is being done to eliminate sanctuary cities?
Well, I think it's going to be happening relatively quickly with the Attorney General and what the statements she's made and willing to go after, including jailing individuals for violating the law. It's the law.
That's right.
And if you don't stand up to lawbreakers, you get more lawbreaking.
Like Trump?
And the same way.
Oh,
my
That was a good one. That was a good one.
Yeah, it was. You're in the minority and you're wasting our time. Bye.
Well,
Thank you. Good riddance to you too.
I want you all to stay.
Good luck.
Let's all stay.
Yeah. All right, let's get back to the question.
Get back to the question.
What is being done to eliminate sanctuary cities? From
Yeah,
North
I think
Carolina?
carrying out the law. Maine has now come out saying that they are not going to abide by the law relative to our schools not pushing transgender sports, male and female sports. Well, it comes down to the point in time when we have our energy secretary confirmed, and hopefully it'll be by the end of this week, stands up and says, okay, all the funding that goes to your school districts in Maine, principals, you want to commit civil disobedience, fine. In this country, you can do that. No taxpayer dollars are going to go and fund that.
Isn't that called
And that begins, that's not blackmail, that's following the law. That's following the law.
That's right.
So bottom line is, that's how we do it. And sanctuary cities are in violation of the law. And the best thing we can do, I think, is to withdraw the funds, any federal funds that go to these cities for roads, for bridges, for education, whatever else. And all of a sudden you have them start to say, well, I guess we are a nation of laws, and the people do rule. Next question.
Almo from Ida writes, Republicans.
I'm not going to call on any hands up unless it's your question, okay?
I didn't know.
Otherwise, we
I didn't know, that
divide.
was the first question,
What?
I didn't know I could raise my hand.
What's the question?
So I was.
No. Let's go back.
Almo from Ida writes, Republicans have the majority of both Congress and Senate. Is the House working to pass laws that will require greater accountability from federal agencies?
We sure are. I mean, you're looking at some of these here that were passed, all of them deal with federal agencies and how we carry out our functions. We've been doing that even when we didn't have all three houses of government, the White House and the Senate. We were still doing that in the U.S. House. The number of bills that we passed and sent over to the Senate that just died there, for lack of Chuck Schumer taking them up,
That's right.
didn't dissolve us of doing what the people asked us to do in our districts. And that's what we did. So we'll keep doing it.
Ken from Blissfield writes, fact or fiction, veteran suicide hotline staff being cut under government cuts.
Fiction. There were cuts in, they were probationary employees, not a single veterans issue. We just checked this out this morning. Not a single veterans concern has gone unaddressed. It's still being carried forward. What's coming out is talking to several agencies, in fact, probationary employees that were put in at the very end of the Biden administration, who haven't even made it to the point of being off probation, are the ones that are
Some of us are 2 years old.
So we have no indication yet in our office, and we take a huge number of veterans concerns. They're all being addressed. If you find a veteran that hasn't been addressed, contact our office.
That was my question.
There's your question.
NPR.
I didn't research on that because, excuse me, update. We had a veteran in my area, and he actually gave me a form.
I thought we were taking questions.
Yeah.
Well,
That was his
that was my question.
I didn't hear that. I apologize.
Okay, we're all here together, man. We're all.
Yeah, that's why I asked.
We're signed down. Anyway. And he just wanted to make sure. Now, what I was able to find that there was not any relief of work, but I wanted to hear it directly from somebody who's more involved and on these committees. That was the reason for that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the key questions we get, or concerns that we get in our office, the phone calls that are taken, are on IRS issues and Veterans Affairs issues. We're intensely involved with that. We defend veterans for every single issue that they have to address. And we're going to continue to do that. And so that's why I checked. We've had no indication yet that any disruption has taken place more than what's normal with the VA. And we hope with the new VA administrator, who I served with, Doug Collins, a vet himself, is going to start taking action, literally on the in certain cases, the terrible record keeping that goes on in the VA.
Next, Megan from Clinton writes, what are you doing to protect our private information and social security numbers from being stolen and hacked from China or Russia or any other cyber criminal after Musk and his DOGE team illegally access and download the information into their own private hard drives?
If anybody has substantiated evidence that that is what happened, I'd like to see it. If that is what happened, if they loaded it in their hard drives, then I will scream bloody murder as well and find out the solution to that.
Who's checking to make sure that they
Yeah,
aren't?
too late.
Who's checking?
That department.
Let's,
You don't know what's
There's
going
no
on.
oversight.
let me finish answering it. Those of you that want to jump to conclusions that aren't even there.
You're not telling facts.
The question is, how do we know the 87,000 new IRS agents that Biden attempted to put in didn't do the same thing with your
You're
data?
not answering. You're not answering.
And, I mean, that's the question. That's the question. If you think that these people that are,
Let the congressman speak. Thank you.
we're here to talk.
They're not
Okay.
peanuts. They got
Okay.
gallery.
Okay.
That was my
That
question.
is, it's, hang on. If that's your question, I will answer it further, but I'm trying to answer it.
Please answer it.
The people that are looking into all of those audited issues right now, including the IRS, are special government employees. The same that Biden had, the same that Clinton had, the same that Obama had. Now, nobody is screaming about those special people, including what Hillary Clinton put together as Secretary of State to go after Trump. Nobody was complaining about that. These people that are doing the audit right now come under the same laws, regulations, and penalties, I might add,
They're 25-year-olds.
as any in the IRS right now or Social Security Administration. All of that. And some of us that are worried about our facts and figures from IRS records are really playing up ourselves a little bit more. I don't think some of these DOGE guys that we're so concerned about really care what name is on that. They're looking for the tracking information of saying, why are the taxpayers being defrauded? Why are they losing their revenue because of big government that is doing things that they shouldn't be doing? That's what's happening. That's the answer. It's no different than any administration. As an Article 1 elected member, we'll continue to watch that. If we see indications going the wrong way, we'll go after it. I know my Democrat colleagues will, and they'll bring up those issues. But right now, those are employees of the federal government and the administration doing the jobs that other administrations have done as well. They're just doing it better. Next question.
Jim from Petersburg writes, how do we get the rights back to the township's zoning for the sites of lithium mining, solar, and wind turbines?
That's a local issue and state issue.
Exactly.
And that's where you have to be careful who you elect to your local government and your state government. And I'm going to leave that to them right now. Next question.
Alan from Ida writes, would you ask Senator Peters to join you at a town hall so he can face the voters?
Gary and I are going to ride a motorcycle trip this summer together across the 5th District. That's one thing we agree on strongly. We both love our Harley Davidsons and we love motorcycling. And I chair the motorcycle caucus. There's a caucus for everything. But I chair the motorcycle caucus in the House. He chairs at the Senate. So.
You didn't answer the
Jennifer,
question.
I'm not going to bring him to a town hall meeting.
Boo!
I don't have the power to bring Gary to the town hall meeting.
We can get him here.
You get it.
Okay.
Jennifer from Petersburg writes, President Trump seems intent on completely reversing the direction of American foreign policy, turning his back on Europe and embracing Russia and other authoritarian governments like Hungary. Will you as a member of Congress stand up for our past allies, or do you agree with Trump's policy of bullying?
I'll stand up for our allies who are truly our allies. Of course I will. Trump is a negotiator. That's what he's made his life success on. And how he negotiates is probably different than I'll negotiate. He's a multimillionaire. I'm not. Maybe he's a little more successful in some negotiations. The issue is how he negotiates if he stays within the lines of his authority under the Constitution. Whether it sounds nice or sounds rough and mean doesn't make a hill of beans difference. As long as it deals with the United States first and foremost. Now, what he's doing with his negotiations both in Israel, Palestine, what he's doing with negotiations now with Ukraine and Russia, I'm waiting to see how it works out. And I think what I've seen in his abilities to win leads me to believe that while it may not be the approach I would take on Ukraine or on Gaza, I wouldn't bet against it being successful.
Do you think Ukraine's starting war?
Excuse me. Mary from Blissfield writes, do you think that undocumented immigrants who have been productive and paid Social Security and Medicare taxes with no hope of ever receiving those benefits, should they be deported?
I believe the law should be followed.
That's right.
And that's the answer I got to give. I know some of you want to have me give a larger, broader answer. But in this country, we're a country of laws, and those immigrants that are coming to this country ought to believe that they will arrive in a country where, unlike theirs, Venezuela and other places, they will be secure under a law. We'll follow the law.
Ruth from Temperance writes, when will our street be open?
What's that?
When will our street be open? I think that's a local issue.
Covered bridge. Bridgeway.
How is that funny?
How is
that a joke?
It's not a joke.
I know it. Everybody's laughing about it.
Yeah.
That's a person's street.
I don't know.
We've been closed for 9 months. We have no idea why.
Again, that's a local issue.
Township is taking no responsibility.
And it's not a federal issue, I know that.
No one's taking responsibility.
I wish I could, but I have not been given the authority to deal with those issues.
And you can also reach out to your local road commission as well.
They have no answers.
Well, I keep asking.
They have no funds to tear down the bridge. And a bunch of people are saying, why don't we just get hammers and start hacking it down?
Well, I wouldn't recommend that.
No, but I mean,
I would recommend talking to our governor who said she'd fix the damn roads and the bridges.
Yvonne from Monroe writes, will Republicans get together to pass a budget?
I think we will. I think we will, and it could be this week. When you have a majority now, 2 seats, that means we can lose 1 Republican vote. We're still pretty good for the 218 we need. In a week or two, when Elise Stefanik becomes UN ambassador, we'll have 1 vote majority. That means we can't lose even 1 vote. So Mike Johnson has to take a wheelbarrow full of frogs and try to keep us all in. And right now, only allow 1 to jump out. And when you have New York Republicans who are sitting in seats that Harris won, and yet it's a Republican in the House sitting in that seat, you have to take in consideration that person as much as a Chip Roy, who lives in Texas with an R30 rating, a Republican seat that couldn't lose. So that's the issue. But I think with Trump coming out yesterday and standing for our 1 big beautiful bill as opposed to 2 from the Senate, I think that is an indication that we're moving toward a solution. I hope so.
Miriam from Temperance writes, what are you doing to protect Medicaid, SNAP, Social Security, and Medicare?
We're going after fraud, waste, and abuse. Other than that, we're doing nothing but following the law and saying that if you're attempting to use Medicaid in a fraudulent way, if you're attempting to use Medicare in a fraudulent way, and we're finding it out now as a result of these audits that are going on, we're going to stamp that out. And some of you, if we find out who it is, I don't think we'll find a 200-year-old person or a 120-year-old person, but we will find where those checks went.
Right.
But there's cuts in the budget.
And where those checks went. We'll take action on that. So those that, myself included, I'm on Medicare, and I don't like it, but I am, my age. I'm on Medicare and Social Security. We're going to protect that promise. I've said that many, many times, and that hasn't changed.
Paul from Otter Lake did his homework and had a broadest question. You want to balance the budget and promote law and order. Why are you gutting Inspector Generals, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, and the IRS? Why are you pushing a huge tax cut for those over $240,000 a year and then throwing a one-time $5,000 bonus to the rest of us? Shouldn't we be cutting the debt? Paul's concerned about the debt.
Well, that's what we're attempting to do, to cut the debt. That's all the reconciliation is about. Cutting the debt. A $5,000 bonus, that's what Elon Musk is talking about as of getting it back to households. Or if we'll go that way, we may decide, no, we're going to put it on reducing the deficit. Yeah. We're going to put it toward this reconciliation process. But that's what we're attempting to do. We're not cutting.
How does tax cuts reduce the debt?
We're doing everything that we need to achieve non-deficit spending. And right now, that's a challenge. And when you have agencies that you just mentioned, including GAO, inspectors general, who have given us incomplete, if not bogus, information for years, that DOGE is finding now in 3 weeks.
Oh my God. I want to see the evidence.
They're just, yeah.
3 weeks to an audit. To an audit that shows what tax dollars have been wasted and where savings can come. Then why would we feel bad about cutting some of these employees who are supposed to be doing this and giving good information to chairmen like me and others to know where we're out of bounds or whether we're tracking well? And so while those inspectors general, it's not going to be put out of business, CFPB has been putting some of your hard-earned cash at risk because of what they've been doing to financial institutions that are costing for ridiculous things they're asking for and stopping the efficient use of the financial investment capabilities of a bank or lending institution to give sound financial advice, not from the government, but from practitioners in the real world. That's why we're looking at those things. Now, some of those may be restored. But I tell you what, they'll be restored to do the job they were asked to do.
So what about, my question,
That was
what
your
about,
question?
yeah, what about Medicaid? What are you gonna do with these old people that are destitute? And you're gonna eliminate Medicaid. Where are these older people gonna go? I mean, a lot of people will end up in a nursing home, a for-profit nursing home, and they charge $10,000 a month, and they get, they work their whole lives for their house, and they lose after 3 years. They lose everything, and then these institutions throw them out, and then they got to go into another place, some other place on Medicaid. So what are you going to do with those people?
In a socialistic state, the taxpayer, limited numbers, would take care of those people from birth to natural death. But in our country, when you have a chance to make decisions about your present and your future, we can only go so far. On the Medicaid, which is a key question you asked, they're going to get their Medicaid. And we have to do what's necessary to make sure that Medicaid is spared the abuse, the waste, the fraud that we're finding going to people who should never be receiving checks on Medicaid.
So it's fuzzy. Who's finding this? I mean, you got a guy named called Big Balls. He is like 17-year-old kid, and he's in there digging into our information. And
the administration,
who's overseeing that besides?
Administration. It's the same administration that you supported with Biden. That was administration not finding this stuff. We're finding it. Some may be accurate, some may be not. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. But right now, it's more believable.
What about the military? When you're going after the military?
Walberg.
I want to support the military.
Yeah. Logan from Temperance writes, what road are we on as a nation? The narrow road that leads to God's blessing and favor and protection, or the wide road that leads to destruction?
That remains to be seen. 77 million people said they wanted this road. 77 million people said they wanted this road. With this administration, this Congress, after seeing what the road was for the past 4 years. I'm not going to stand here and say that America defines what is the road to heaven versus the road to destruction. But I can tell you, based upon the traditional values of this country, hard work, accountability with responsibility, a belief in God, a belief in science,
Oh, there we go.
a belief in science that says there are X and Y chromosomes.
Oh,
On that, I would say we're going in the right direction now. Next question.
Matt from Clinton writes, why isn't Congress investigating the accidental firing of the nuclear safety guys? If Mark Cuban was leading DOGE, you guys would be asking questions about it.
Well, I think we are asking questions, and that's why some of those have been restored.
That's my question.
And restored pretty quick, within a day. That was your question?
I believe they're still looking for some of those guys.
Well, hopefully someone we won't find, but we'll get the best people in this spot.
They should be there. Ray from Temperance writes, can the federal government require or force an audit of federal funds given to the states?
Absolutely. We are the fiduciary, if you want to use that term, of all tax dollars, taxpayer dollars at the federal government. Who else would be?
My question, should we record, can you do that?
We
Can
can.
you start that?
We can.
Should we?
We should.
If they're finding all this fraud in the federal government,
We should.
how much do you think we have?
Well, no, we can't look at the state's coffers, but we can look at the federal dollars. For instance, education. We give anywhere between 8 and 11% of a K-12 education budget from federal dollars. Now, sadly, we give over 90% of the regulatory overhead, white paper, permitting, regulatory requirements, testing requirements, etc. Over 90% comes from the feds. All of that has a cost, significant cost that may hurt the teachers in the classroom and the students, who are the two most important people in the classroom. But yeah, if it's federal funds, if there's federal funds now going to DEI at University of Michigan, or Michigan State, or Columbia University, or Harvard, or MIT, yeah, we ought to be auditing.
Who would initiate that? How would that start?
Well, in education, it'll be me and Jason Smith, who chairs the Ways and Means Committee.
What are you waiting for?
We're doing it. We've already started. Yes, question.
Cynthia from Temperance Rights, what will SAVE Acts affect?
Remember, it's only been hardly 4 weeks since this administration has been in. It's happening quick.
Cynthia from Temperance Rights, what will SAVE Acts effect have on women, seniors, and poor voters? Isn't this repetitive law and aimed at voter suppression?
How many ways do I have to show this? How many places do I have to show this? Is it suppression of my freedoms? If I were wanting to purchase a 6-pack, did I have to show this?
That's not a passport or a birth certificate.
You're talking of voting.
Yeah.
Showing the fact that you are an American citizen in order to.
But a $200 passport, some people can't afford.
Well, then they shouldn't be voting.
Lordy.
Under the SAVE Act, there's no requirement that it has to
And
be a
passport should be free.
But if you are a legal alien here and you don't have a passport, there's a reason you don't have a passport.
Not everybody has passports. I do.
You don't have to show a passport to vote here in this township.
Not yet.
You don't have to, and under the SAVE Act, you don't wouldn't either.
Oh, no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Under the SAVE Act, you wouldn't either. You have to show proof that you are a citizen of this country. Now, most of us have no trouble doing that.
Except women that have their married
Name change.
John, I doubt that any of that argument is accurate at all. What we're talking about is getting at those non-legal individuals who are trying to vote in our elections. I don't see a problem with that. And 77 million people didn't see a problem with that. Is that your question?
That's my question.
Okay.
I've been married before, so if I were to change my residence, I would have to have proof of my name changes. Is that correct? In order to register to vote in a different district? Is that correct?
I believe that's correct, that you would have to, if you're changing address and now you're going to be voting in a new district, absolutely. We want to know who you are.
And what about people that have suffered from floods, the hurricanes, fires, that have lost all of their records, and then all of a sudden, now we're looking at an election and I need to prove that I can vote and all my documents have been destroyed. Isn't that will slow down those voters from
it could.
going to the ballot? Okay.
That's,
and then as far as
let me answer that question first. No, let me answer that question first. You're lobbing them up and it's going to be hard to answer them.
Okay.
We don't have floods everywhere.
Right.
And if we had an organization, governmental organization that got in and helped those people get up and running again, not like FEMA,
we wouldn't have the lengthy time, but you'll always have some problems. If we have a tornado, which we've had in Monroe County, and all of our records get blown away. And now I'm going to move somewhere else in the country. That's a different story, but there are a limited number of people to do that. That's why we need government officials on the ground helping people who are legal to find that as quickly as possible. Some, if it happens around the election time, they may lose that opportunity. We want to reduce that. But just for those few people, to let it continue to go that we have states that don't require the proof of citizenship for people to vote, that's wrong. The security of our elections is more important, I would hope, for you as well as all of these people.
One more thing, please, in regards to say that. I recently came across some articles, I don't know if they were from the Brennan Center or Open Secrets, but it stated that in the last 40 years, we've had 60 to 68 instances of illegal voting in our elections. Can you comment on that, please?
I don't know where they got the facts that came from. I do know that we took a much greater emphasis on having poll watchers, ballot counters, and a lot of attorneys in this last election flooding the scenes to make sure that we had secure elections.
Oh.
John from
77 million people said that boy.
John from Ottawa Lake writes, how about the deficit of 36 trillion? The U.S. takes in 9 trillion but spends 11 trillion. This cannot continue. Cut 2 trillion in spending but do not continue the tax breaks. Get to a balanced budget and then take any excess and start paying down the deficit.
I couldn't agree more. Just give me the votes to do that. That's the key. And I think what took place and what now is being found about the waste, fraud, and abuse in government is going to ignite even some Democrat legislators to say, I can't push back against this. I have to vote differently.
Brandon from Eric.
Erie.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I know. We know Erie well. We love Erie. Sorry. 1974 Impoundment Act is how they are breaking the law, breaking us in New York first train. Do you want to expand on that?
Yeah, I was just the first question. I didn't realize I had to make my hand. I apologize about that. But you said they are breaking the law, but they are. The 1974 Impoundment Act is what was pushed through Congress to protect their power of the purse. Their power of the purse was then upheld by the Supreme Court in 1975 in New York versus Train. As of right now, they are breaking the law, and they are stopping you from having as much say in the federal government as you are supposed to have, and thus stopping us as your constituents from having.
They're not stopping me.
Great question.
Then what are you doing?
Then what are you doing? Because they're stopping other people's, and you're seeing yourself through, but that is an overall systematic thing. That is, just because you align with President Trump, what happens when you do fall out of alignment with President Trump, if you ever do? That stops your power, and it stops us from having a voice in our country.
What court has ruled the Impoundment Act is being violated?
So the Supreme Court in 1975 is what made impoundment illegal, and this is impoundment, and that was what made it set precedent as a law.
Every decision and ruling by a court a proper ruling?
Yes.
Yes.
Red Scott was a proper ruling.
You have to, but you don't get to break the law until somebody.
No, you're talking about case law. You're not talking about law. You're not talking about law. You're talking about case law. That's important that you would go and read Article 1, Article 2, Article 3 of the Constitution. The courts have limited power. We've come to believe that court rulings are law. They only stand until they're overturned. Dred Scott was a perfect example. A terrible ruling. I agree. Racist ruling. So why would we consider impoundment when it's not based upon the Constitution or any law that you're worried about Congress passing? We ought, if we had the ability of numbers, we'd be throwing some of these judges out of office.
We have to follow the law until
We
it's
have that
overturned by
power.
someone else. If you do.
All right, we have a lot more questions to get through. That was
I think we've answered that we both disagree. I feel very confident what's happening right now, and I think a lot of you, as you let it roll out, you're gonna have to be quiet as you're quiet.
We only have time for one more. We approach the hour mark before Supervisor Pryor charges us for 2 hours. Al from Bedford writes, some of your colleagues are pushing for transparency regarding the JFK files and unidentified anonymous phenomenon. How should we feel if we have been misled by our government for all this time? Do you support full transparency on these issues?
I support full transparency. I get another question.
Probably. Vic's got another question. Vic from Erie writes, a different land tax rate for rental houses. That's his question.
Okay, let's stay with the state there.
All right.
You got another one?
Megan from Clinton writes, what are you doing to protect our private information and social security numbers? We already read that one. We got through them all.
No.
No, that's not true.
No.
Did Ukraine cause the war?
Give your information.
That's a good question.
No,
I want to know about
Ukraine
Rick.
didn't cost the war.
Then call us out. We'll call him out. Helpful.
Yes.
You got my answer, man. Folks, I appreciate you coming. You see there's
Why is it my
differences here.
Me too.
You can see that there's emotions, you can see there's hand signals, and all the rest that go on. We are Americans, and we've gone through challenges in the past. We've gone through Civil War, we've gone through depression, we've gone through the last 4 years, we went through the 4 years prior to that, and we're going to go through these 4 years. But I tell you what, the only way that this system works.
Congressman has the floor.
He's only lying.
All I ask of each of us is in the honesty of our heart of hearts, truly the honesty of our heart of hearts, to look at the facts before making ultimate decisions on what you personally believe.
That's all to it.
And I think that would help all of our demeanors, our mental health, and all of the rest. We'll get through this. I'm pleased at what the voters did in this country, both the Electoral College and the plurality of them in November of 2016. I'm glad what they did gives us a chance for a correction. And I think so far it's working well.
I never got to ask my follow-up question for my.
Well, I'm sorry, I don't know what that question was, so
According to undocumented immigrants, I wonder if it wouldn't be wiser, you think it wouldn't be wiser to help people who have been here undocumented, but have been a working part of our society, paying taxes, to help them find a legal path to citizenship rather than the expense of deporting them and gutting, by the way, our agricultural system, our.
I understand what you're saying, so let me jump in and say, I'm willing to look at that, but only after we've secured our border, we made it very clear of what laws we follow in getting people across, and we get the criminals out of here. Now that's the process we're going to go through. Until we're able to get those out, we can't work on that. And I think that's what the American people wanted with 77 million voters. Did I say that once before?
Yeah.
Hey, you all have a good day.